is hearing same-sex marriage cases from 4 different states at the same time. This is the biggest session on this issue to hit the courts yet. Plaintiffs from Kentucky, from Michigan, from Ohio, and from Tennessee will argue that they have a constitutional right to marry. Here's a breakdown of that. The first 3 are about the right to marry inside those states, and Ohio's is a little bit different. It's about whether that state has to recognize out-of-state marriages. Ohioan Jim Obergefell wanted his name on his husband's death certificate, but because he married him in Maryland, that request was denied.
I know this is a more conservative panel of 3 judges, so I don't know. I want to believe it'll be another win, but if it isn't, I'm not stopping.
NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams is following this story. Thanks, Pete. So look, gay marriage advocates have won almost all of these cases so far that have hit the federal courts, 20 victories so far. But there are constitutional law professors that are saying this could be the first victory on the other side for gay marriage opponents. Why is that?
Well, they've won all of the victories so far in the past year since the Supreme Court ruled on the Defense of Marriage Act a year ago. Some are saying that the Sixth Circuit, you've got 2 Republican appointees, 1 Democratic appointee. That raises the possibility that this circuit could go the other way. But I always think it's risky to handicap the outcome of a decision based on the party of the person who appointed these judges, given that some of the decisions below that have struck down bans on same-sex marriage have come from judges who were appointed by Republican presidents.
Pete, we just looked at a graphic of these 3 judges that are hearing the case. It's a grab bag of there's 1 Clinton appointee, there are 2 Bush appointees. One of those from the Bush side is actually something of a wild card who's had a really inconsistent record. What do we know about these judges?
Well, I guess you're probably talking about Jeff Sutton, the one on the left there. He surprised some people by declaring that Obamacare was constitutional, which to some extent was a different direction than many Republican-appointed judges had the direction they'd been going in as that case was working its way to the Supreme Court 2 years ago.
And Pete, for everyone wondering at home why these cases are being decided together and why in Ohio of all places, why is that?
Well, that little arc of states that you showed there in the Midwest, they're all part of the same federal judicial circuit. All the states are divided up into various different circuits, and that's the whole 6th Circuit right there. Now, right next to that is the 7th Circuit. We're going to have arguments in Wisconsin and Indiana coming up in a couple of weeks. And then from the 9th Circuit, the 2 states that are not shown in yellow, which is Idaho and Nevada, they'll be going to the 9th Circuit too. Now, remember, the 10th Circuit has already decided a same-sex marriage case from 2 states, Utah and Colorado. They chose to hear those separately. For the sake of economy now, the federal courts are basically saying, let's get on with it. The issues are pretty much the same. The legal issues are the same. The constitutional issues are the same. So let's lump them all together.
Pete Williams, thank you for sorting that out for us. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And so if this court does decide against gay marriage, it would leave federal courts as a whole divided. Let's look at what will come next. Gloria Allred is a civil rights attorney who's fought a lot of cases against discrimination, and the New Yorker's Richard Socarides is a former advisor to President Clinton on LGBT issues. Thank you, both of you, for being here. Gloria, if this federal appeals court still finds same-sex marriage in these 4 states unconstitutional, what recourse do these plaintiffs have?
Well, it may very well be that ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to grapple with this issue, Ronan, because when they struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, they did not go to the merits of whether or not it is unconstitutional for a state to ban marriage equality. I challenged the ban on marriage equality in California in 2004. We fought that for 6 years, twice to the California Supreme Court. We won the right in California for our clients, Robin Tyler and Diane Olson, to be married, and for thousands of other couples also to be married. However, the U.S. Supreme Court hasn't decided the merits. Justice Kennedy, who's going to be the swing vote once it is decided or accepted and decided by the Supreme Court, has indicated.
Next.
Pardon me? Yeah, I do. Has indicated that he thinks there's a liberty interest, that we shouldn't have 2-tier marriages, one for heterosexuals, one for everyone else. So there are constitutional issues that may very well be involved, because It is demeaning to same-sex couples not to be able to marry, and they have the right to dignity under the United States Constitution.
And the decision overturning DOMA argued just on that ground, saying that it denies them dignity. Richard, you've written recently in the New Yorker, for instance, that this may be the final stages of the campaign for marriage equality. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that since the Windsor decision, the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court Windsor decision last summer, we've seen this incredible explosion of these cases, which have all gone in favor of gay marriage, all in favor of gay rights proponents. And even though, as Gloria is absolutely right, in the Windsor case, the Supreme Court did not decide the issue of whether there was a constitutional right to marriage. Their reasoning in that case was such that all the other federal appellate courts now that have taken on the issue have said that we have to find that there is a federal constitutional right to same-sex marriage. Now, I don't think they're going to lose in the Sixth Circuit after the argument today, but if they did lose in the Sixth Circuit, it would provide a divide between the circuits, because as Pete said, the Fourth Circuit has ruled and the Tenth Circuit has ruled in favor of gay marriage. So now we're at the Sixth Circuit. If there is a division between these two circuits, the Supreme Court would be more likely to take the case, and we might have it finally resolved next June, which we're all hoping for.
I agree, and I want to say how proud I am of individuals who are gay and lesbian who are not going to stand for denial of their rights, and they are going to win the right to marry. I personally am going to perform a marriage for a gay couple in 10 days, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, and you've been a great champion of this.
Thank you very much.
You've been a great supporter.
It's about equality for everyone. It's about equality. It is about equality.
It may rankle you, actually, to hear this. There's this incredible sound of Senator Rand Paul responding to a question about whether he would support legislation defining marriage explicitly as between a man and a woman. Take a listen to this.
I am in favor of traditional marriage, and really, I think that's been the foundation of civilization for thousands of years. And the loss of the idea of marriage is really probably the leading cause of poverty in our country.
Look, I got to say, I'm a Rand Paul fan. I don't want to caricature him. He did go on to explain that the poverty stance is about people having children out of wedlock, but there's no literature that links that to more same-sex marriage.
Actually, the poverty stance is because of deadbeat dads, and that is the #1 reason that women are living in poverty with their children. The failure of the legislature, Congress, to pass laws which make it easier to collect child support from these deadbeat dads forces the women on to aid to families with dependent children.
And you know, Senator Rand Paul is so out of sync with what America is thinking right now. I mean, the remarkable thing about that comment is just in a few short years, that kind of comment seems so out of sync with where the American public is.
If I may, I think it already does now. And certainly that particular observation about poverty is not backed by any literature I've seen. Glad to hear you think the same. Appreciate both of your insights on this. Gloria Allred, Richard Socarides. Always a pleasure to have them on.